The Leadership tab is pretty much just another military tab here. On the bottom you get the list of all your leaders. If they have a Navy hat or a little spyglass, then they're an admiral. The spyglass means they're an explorer. The only difference is that they can go into provinces that you can't see. So an explorer can travel into these unmapped areas, and a regular admiral can't. This little hand means a general, and if they have a little conquistador's hat, then they're a conquistador. Same thing, conquistadors can go into unexplored land provinces, regular generals can't. There's also a way to convert your ruler into a general, which will turn your king into one. Just for an example, we'll create one with Henry VIII. He didn't turn out too well. All rulers have, or all generals have, 4 stats. Fire, which is more important as the game goes on. It's kind of like cannons and guns, more or less. Shock, which is kind of shock infantry, shock cavalry, sort of running people down. That's the most important kind of damage that you can inflict early in the game. Maneuver, which is very important. It helps the speed of things, including in the most recent patch, the speed of navies. And it basically represents how well the leader can get his troops around. So they move faster, they do a little better in combat, and perhaps more importantly, they take less damage from attrition, because he's, I guess, a bit more capable with supplies. Siege is only going to be available for land units, and it's fairly rare, and it represents basically the leader's ability to finish a siege faster. If you're more defensive or you have a certain national idea, you can get up to 2 or sometimes even 3 dots in this. The 3 is very rare. It's very effective, though. It can turn sieges that would take a year into a month or 2. To recruit a leader, you just need a diplomat, so I can recruit a general right now if I want, but right now my army tradition is 0%, because I haven't done any actual fighting, so my army doesn't really know what the hell they're doing. If you have high army tradition, then you lose more of it when you recruit a general, but his stats will be better. So this Charles Brandon guy is better than Henry VIII, and unfortunately that's just luck, because Henry VIII actually had a pretty good military stat, so he could have turned out better. But if I get another general right now, you'll notice that he's not as good as Charles Brandon is. That's because I'm recruiting with 0 tradition. Navy is the same way. I'm just not going to get an admiral that's any good. And the way you get your tradition up is by fighting. So it should go up naturally, but it goes away over time too. So you'll lose it when you're not at war. Discipline, I kind of brought this up earlier. It's basically a factor of your ability to inflict casualties. Discipline is not that useful until later in the game, when fire and shock values get high enough that and battles get long enough that casualties actually matter. Late in the game, though, if your discipline is really high, you can actually wipe out entire armies by just killing them all, which is kind of brutal, but it's also quite effective. The Culture tab, new and heir to the throne. And there's a new value here. You have the naval and army tradition again here, same as in the previous tab, but now you also have a cultural tradition. Culture is kind of like the opposite of army and navy tradition. You get it mostly by not fighting. And cultural tradition is useful because it lets you recruit great men, advisors that you want. You can use magistrates down here to create things that will enhance your culture, and then with your cultural tradition, you can hire some guys that you want. Basically, it's like recruiting a general or an admiral. The more of it you have, the better the quality of the guy you recruit, although you can never be completely certain of what you're going to get. Like if you have 100% cultural tradition, you might not get a 6-star advisor, you might only get a 5, but it will generally always be someone with high value. The great men that you can choose from vary. You have philosophers who can get you more prestige, various guys that get you technology in the different groups, artists give you more stability, you have naval reformers, grand admirals, things like that boost your navies, colonial governors that boost your colonies, diplomats reduce your infamy, spy masters make your spies better. One of the more popular ones is the Master of the Mint. He reduces your inflation. If you have a lot of these guys, you can mint money and have a positive monthly balance, which is nice, but, there are other things that you can do with advisors. Traders are very good. Collectors are very good. These both boost your trade. If you have a 6-star advisor, one of these, your merchants will be much stronger. Another very popular one is the Grand Marshal. This is a new one. This is odd because he's the only advisor that is completely useless to a republic. All he does is boost your yearly legitimacy. But legitimacy is really important, and it goes up fairly slowly, so having a Grand Marshal's not a bad idea. Other than that, it's mostly just a matter of what you're going to use them for and what you need in your current situation. If you have a lot of revolts, a high judge that reduces your revolt risk is nice. There are also some decisions that can only be done if you have a particular advisor. So if you have a statesman, there are a lot of decisions that you can make. If you have a theologian, there are some religious decisions that you can make that you can't normally make. So sometimes it's useful to grab one, even if they're crappy, because it doesn't really matter their quality if you just need them for a decision. The Missions and Decisions tab is the last one in the main menu here. When the game starts, the game will randomly generate a mission. For England, it's usually something like get a colony in the New World. The mission thing basically tries to guide you in your play, and it may say something like vassalize Scotland, get a colony, deal with the province that you have a core on, that sort of thing. So, for instance, if France took Calais from us, then we might get a mission to get it back, or we might even get a mission to attack the Spanish Netherlands and get a province from them. It's kind of random. Some of the missions are terrible, but you can cancel them. It hits your prestige and you can't do it for a few years, but it might be worth it if the mission isn't any good. There are also national decisions. These are similar to province decisions, which I didn't really cover very much, but basically what happens with these is, with a decision, it's basically something that you can enact at any time, and it has a result that will be useful to you in some ways, detrimental in others. For instance, this is the Anti-Piracy Act. If we hover over the title, it says basically what it does. It's more flavor than anything. If we hover over this little question mark, it tells us what we need to actually enact the decision. There are actually two kinds of prerequisites. One of them is just to see it at all. So, for instance, to form the British nation, we would need to be in a British culture group. Any other country can't even see this at all because they're not British, so they're not going to form a British nation. In this case, we can pass the Anti-Piracy Act because we have less infamy than we need and we're at peace. We can't form the British nation because we don't have the provinces in Scotland that we need to form Great Britain. But if we were to get them, then we could pass it. And then we can see the results here. If it's grayed out, you can't do it. If it's green, you can. So if we were going to pass the Anti-Piracy Act, then until the end of the game, we would get less infamy, which is nice, but our limit would be a little lower, which is fine, and we would get more prestige. So that's a good decision to enact, and it's free, so we would pass it. Once we pass it, it disappears, but it appears here as a modifier. And we can accumulate a lot of these as the game goes on. There are quite a few of them that are unique to England and Great Britain. Some of these about the fleet in particular. So that's not a bad thing. Most of them are positive. Some of them are balanced. For instance, some of them lower your revolt risk but take away taxes. Some of them give you more infamy, but they might be worth it. Some of them lower your taxes but increase your stability. Some of them do the opposite. Many of the religious decisions are the same way. That's basically it for the main menu. Left it in the log just in case I want to look back and see it. If you think something's really important, like a country declaring war on you, then you're definitely going to want to have the pop-up and pause. That way you'll have some time to react to it and think about what you're going to do. If you play the game very slowly, you probably don't need that. And if you're pretty good at pausing automatically, it's not really a big deal. Additionally, there's the ledger down here. The ledger sounds boring, but it's actually very useful, and I'll probably cover it next.